Good evening and welcome to this regular meeting of the Planning Board for the City of Birmingham, Wednesday, July 23rd, 2025. Could we please call the roll?
Scott Klein.
Present.
Robin Blair.
Here.
Stuart Jeffries.
Here.
Kurt Kozak.
Here.
Daniel Sher. Janelle Bullboys.
Here.
Brian Williams.
Present.
Duncan Curry.
Here.
Missy Merman. Carter Anderson.
Duncan.
Olivia Batanzos.
All right, we are quorum, and just for the record, Mr. Curry will be a voting member tonight, and we have a full board. Let's move forward to the review and approval of the minutes from July 9. Any comments or corrections?
I'll move approval of the minutes of July 9, 2025.
I'll second those.
Motion, Mr. Williams, second, Mr. Kozak. Any conversation? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion unanimous. Let's move forward. Welcome, everybody. I think we all know why we're here. We're veterans of this process by now, and I say that tongue slightly in cheek. But welcome. There will be an opportunity for the public to comment tonight. Very quickly, I know you all know this, but for those of you watching at home, and if some of you are new, there's going to be a report given by staff. The board may ask questions and engage in a conversation with staff about some of the technical matters. We're going to ask the applicant if they would care to come forward and provide anything on the record. The applicant will have that opportunity. There may be a back and forth.
Recording in progress.
There may be an opportunity for back and forth there. That is between the board and the applicant. We will then open it to public comment, and there will be an opportunity for you to come forward and give your comments. I'll give a little bit more instructions then, but please know that you will have every opportunity to do so. So with that, Mr. Dupuy, do we have any changes to the agenda as it has been published?
No, sir, no changes.
And no other letters on procedural matters?
No.
No, thank you. That's good to hear. So let's move forward. We have a special land use permit, and we have a site plan and design review for 479 South Old Woodward. For the public, again, these are two separate approvals that need to occur. They will be handled separately, however, because they are so intertwined, we're going to talk about them all at once. But there will be two discussions with regard to any future moving forward on that. So, Mr. Dupuy, would you like to take us and start us out?
Yes, please. And I know, as you alluded to, we've been at this a couple of times, and we're all very well versed in it. But if you'll indulge me, I think it's worthwhile just taking it from the top again, so I'm going to do so. The subject site, 479, is down at the south end there, just out of the Birmingham Place and north of the 555 at Hazel and South Old Woodward, and also Big Woodward. It's under construction now. It's a 5-story mixed-use building, retail, 2 floors of office, and 2 floors of residential, as entitled. And you can see in this report, there's a sort of a compilation of the approval history of this particular site. And in particular, I wanted to point out two things. One, the current building, the building that's being constructed today, that 5-story mixed-use building. That was approved by the planning board through a final site plan and design review process, the standard final site plan and design review process that all new buildings go through. It is currently fully entitled. It's got permits. It's being constructed. It's expected to be, I think, done in 2026-ish, depending on how slow or fast things go. The other important point in the timeline here is at one point the applicant, I'm going to find the date, petitioned for a zoning ordinance amendment, which essentially brought us here today. The zoning ordinance amendment amended the downtown overlay standards to allow any properties that are located in the D4 downtown overlay district that were not located within the former parking assessment district to seek a special land use permit for a waiver of off-street parking spaces. So I make that distinction because, as we know, as a board, those are two different paths. The path that the fully entitled building took, final site plan and design review, that level of approval solely resides with the planning board. When you layer over the special land use permit, our role changes a bit. We become a recommendation body. Ultimately, at the end of this meeting, I expect that a recommendation will be made on both the final site plan and the special land use permit, which then get forwarded to the City Commission for final approval. I say that specifically because I know I've gotten a couple of phone calls gotten a lot of postcards from us, and recently you should have got a postcard for today and a postcard for August for the city commission approval for the public hearing. So that's the distinction there. Next, I'd like to go to our last meeting, June 25th, 2025, where we moved to postpone because we received a late, it's called a technical report from the applicant from Fishbeck, sort of making the case, I guess you will, for the parking waiver. And what you asked me to do was review it with whomever I deem appropriate, whether it be consultants or internal staff. We decided internal staff were more than capable of reviewing that report. So we reviewed it together with our parking manager because there were some parking deck implications in that report. Also the city manager, just with the experience with the parking assessment district and all things Birmingham. And we provided you this analysis. And I split it up into 4 sections because their report split up into 4 sections. I note in the introduction and the parking calculation sections, which are the first 2 on the first page, basically just a summary of the project. We agree with everything that was stated there, kind of just regurgitated why we're here and what we're asking about. It's the second section, the parking in the downtown Birmingham overlay district section, where we, I guess, break it down into 2 main arguments that we read in that section. One, their consultant makes an argument about the walkability of downtown Birmingham and the proximity to, they mentioned specifically the Peabody and Pierce parking structures, which are the closest parking structures. Their argument's based on the concept of this 5-minute walking area or quarter mile, which is, as I state here, a pretty valid planning concept. It's widely used, it's not uncommon. What I feel was missed here is that, although it is a valid planning concept, we've considered that for 25 plus years at this point. It came out of the downtown Birmingham 2016 plan, where we consider form-based code, walkability, these new urbanism principles that include things like a 5-minute walk shed. And what we feel as though is inappropriate is to layer it over again by making the double walkability argument. We feel as though in our policy and our practice we've already included it. So I don't think it's appropriate to squeeze more juice out of that lemon. Also, we heard similar arguments when the applicant petitioned to be in the former parking assessment district before, and it didn't go much farther than that at that point. The second point, that there's sufficient capacity in Pierce and Peabody, they provided the data for March of 2025, sort of a snapshot in time of those 2 particular structures. They did also mention in there some other structures that have capacity, such as Northrop Woodward and Park Street garages, which are they argue within a 10-minute walk shed. From our perspective, the city that is, those structures were designed for the properties within the former parking assessment district. That many of them are undeveloped, and many of them are currently being developed. 4 buildings in particular, the RH and JP Morgan Chase building, the 2 back-to-back, are nearly complete, and theoretically we'll be using the Pierce deck quite a lot. There's also a deck at a new development at 320 Martin behind the post office, and then the Hunter House site that are going to be going up soon. All within the former parking assessment district, all paid the assessment over the series of however many years, all have rights to use those parking structures. And then finally, in their findings and recommendations, I suggest they summarize or close by suggesting that the 49 off-street parking spaces that they're deficient can be met by the public parking system within a 5-minute or quarter-mile walk. To me, that fails to acknowledge what I consider an additional burden to the public parking system on top of the reductions that they are seeking as a part of the B3 zoning district. 49 spaces represents 36% of their required parking on site, and with the reductions in the B3 zoning district, they already had the benefit of a maximum of 61 spaces reduced on top of their required parking. I think it's inappropriate to suggest that the parking decks can handle the 49 without also acknowledging that they're already getting 61, a maximum of 61. So in that, after all that, I noted last time I made a presentation that the bulk of this report suggests there's no changes to this building being made aside from the interior uses within the floor plans. There's no change in height, no change in the facade, no change in the site, no change in the colors, nothing like that. So what we focused on is the parking section, which is the crux of this whole argument. So what's happening here is the currently entitled building, as I mentioned, has a retail first floor, 2 office, 2 residential. What they'd like to do is transition everything upwards, basically, to make 2 floors of commercial retail, 2 floors of office, and 1 floor of residential. That's all well and good. It meets generally the use requirements of the ordinance. But with that change in use comes a change in required parking. So here we are. In the past, we went over a lot of different methods of providing off-street parking facilities or off-street parking spaces. As I mentioned at the onset, their current approach is to seek that waiver that's available to them in the downtown Birmingham Overlay District section of the ordinance. So the table here, the 479 Old Woodward Birmingham Tower Table A requirements, has not changed. It's still a difference of 49 parking spaces after you take into consideration all the different uses, the reductions, and what's currently provided on site, which is 88 in 2 underground parking levels and a surface parking area. I'll also restate that the applicant has received several variances over the course of this project, 2 of which are related to parking. The first is related to the first floor parking area. The overlay district requires that parking not be provided within 20 feet of a building frontage. They were able to receive that variance because of their unique position being on 3 street frontages. That part of the plan is not proposed to change. We're arguing that that variance can stand. The other variance was for 11 parking spaces that they received in 2023. Based on the old mix of uses, all they were short was 11. So they sought and received a variance of 11 parking spaces. This particular variance, though, because the conditions are changing so drastically, we feel would no longer apply and be null and void should this move forward. In summary, just to restate everything, after all the calculations and all the considerations in the overlay and the parking section of our ordinance, they're short 49. We note there's 2 on-street that are currently in front that they could request, but that hardly does any damage to the request. So it's sort of not really worth getting into at this point unless you have questions about it. Other than that, our recommendation also did not change. We don't feel they meet the standards of site plan review in this case due to the significant gap between the required and provided parking. And as always, I'm happy to answer any questions and bring up anything you need to on the screen. Back to you, Chair Klein.
All right, thank you, Mr. Dupuy. Are there any questions from the board for staff? Mr. Jeffers.
Nick, you probably answered this 4 or 5 years ago, but how did this property not get in the parking assessment district? Was there a reason that it's, or is this the city made a goof up, maybe?
It's a hard question to answer, but as a bit of a background, I think I can answer some of your question. The assessments related to the construction of the 5 decks and the associated lots and things started as early as 1950. So, as you know, our overlay standards and our overlay districts didn't get developed till the early 2000s. So most of that was already in place before our downtown ordinances came online. And that's about all I know. Obviously, I wasn't there in the early 2000s when they developed this overlay, so I couldn't tell you site specifics. But I guess the area of the former parking assessment district has been around for a long time.
Any other questions of staff? Mr. Brown?
On a similar line, when was Birmingham Place approved and when was it built?
I only know half of that question. The Birmingham Place was built sometime in the 1980s. 81.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions for staff? Mr. Kozik?
Can you remind us, so there's, so the parking on site, there are 2 levels below grade, correct?
2 levels below grade, correct.
And then at grade, there's, I don't know if that's 10 cars or something like that. is it, so, are there any stacked cars?
Yes, so on this first floor, it is stacked parking. So there are, 10 spaces, 9 spaces that are double stacked with lifts. And then, of course, this ADA one is the only one that's not. Everything on the lower levels is just single stall.
So I don't know if you know the answer to this, but to meet the, so residential, you're obligated, forget about variances, you're obligated to park on site. Correct? Or maybe it isn't defined or something because they obtain variances in this mixed-use building.
Well, I guess I would say, just to have said it, in this particular site, you're required to provide everything on site. I suppose what you're asking me is based on conversations we've had about other buildings that are in the district, in the former district, I should say. And in that former parking assessment district, all you technically have to provide is residential. Just to make that clarification.
And what percentage of the parking is for the commercial space versus?
In the current proposal?
Yeah. I don't need an exact number. What is it?
Upwards of 90, it's 6 versus 137, or 131.
It's right here.
All right.
Any other questions for?
Okay,
I got
thank
a
you.
follow-up.
Mr. Jeffries?
Nick, is there any other D4 property in our city that is not part of a former parking assessment district that has to do all their parking on site?
There is not, and if you recall, what I recall most from our zoning ordinance amendment exercise was that was one of the main arguments of the applicant at the time, was that they are the only property that exists that way. So they sort of made that argument in hopes that we adopt this amendment because it is so unique.
Any other questions? The applicant is here. Welcome. If you care to come forward and provide any sort of words you'd like to, please do so.
Thank you, Mr. Klein. My name is DeRade Marcus. I'm one of the members of the entity that owns Birmingham Tower Partners. I have here with me today Ethan Holtz, our counsel. I also have a broker with Friedman, Jared Friedman, who is going to speak about the potential tenant and why we're transitioning to this. And we also have Jill Bauer, I'm sorry, blanked out, as our traffic consultant. So, you know, the question is why are we here? Well, I definitely wouldn't be here if we were in the parking assessment district, because it would be a checkbox on an application. I'd make these changes. All the comments and all the naysayers would not have a leg to stand on, basically. But because I'm not in the parking assessment district, I am here trying to get approved under an ordinance that the city passed in order to right a wrong for this specific property, which is the basis of this slump. So it is true that I am trying to change the second floor and, like Nick said, transition everything up and make the second floor commercial retail as allowed by your code. Take the 2 stories of offices on 3 and 4 and do 5 to 6 apartments on the top floor. We currently show 22 apartments on 4 and 5, offices on 2 and 3, and retail on 1 with the 2 parking decks. You know, as developers develop, things happen, things change, and I'll give you some prime examples. You know, Restoration Hardware, I remember, had 2 towers up before they came back to you folks and said, you know, we want to scrap this. We have new plans. We want to do something better. You know, the Daxton, I know, came back for a few changes because that's what happens with developers. Developers want to give a building that has long-term viability for the city. Nobody, not the developer or the city, wants to see a failed building, obviously. So we as developers look for, you know, what the best use is. And in this situation, the best use calls for us to eliminate a floor of apartments because the market conditions have changed. Within the past year and a half, there have probably been over 200 apartments that have been constructed in the city of Birmingham in highly amenitized buildings that offer all the bells and whistles that a mixed-use building really doesn't offer. And, you know, we have seen with our studies that those types of offerings, rental offerings, tend to suffer. And if you move up to the 5th floor and create 5 larger spaces, you get the most discerning type of client who's looking for that type of product. And when you only have 5 or 6 apartments, it's a much easier box to check and a development to complete. So that's why we're here. What has happened is obviously we're in our leasing mode, and we have had interest from Gardner White to do their concept called GW Studios. If you've read the papers lately, they just opened up a store in downtown Detroit, and it's their high-end concept, and it's, you know, their best-in-class concept. And what they would like to do is they want to take the 1st floor and do general retail and do a showroom / consultation for interior designers on their 2nd floor, similar to what they're doing in downtown Detroit. Now, I think we're all of reasonable minds to say, well, you know, if the 2nd floor was turning into a restaurant, we would have a shock on the system in parking. But I think we can all understand that, you know, with a furniture store, yes, you will have customers, but nowhere near the demand of what the statute calls for, which is 1 per 300 square feet. And the reason that I'm here with a 45-car deficiency, if I'd want to put a furniture store in, is because there is a statute that requires me to provide 1 per 300 square feet, even though the use will never come to that amount. And so that's why we're here. So based on that change, we have thought it best to exercise the SLUP instead of going through the option of trying to do a shared parking study. I have to live in harmony with these people that are at the Birmingham Place, and I fully accept that. I didn't want to put the burden on Birmingham Place, even though that we, the master board, can vote to approve it, but we're not going to go down that road because we don't want to cause conflict. So we thought that, why don't we exercise the statute that the city passed to right this wrong for this building? Because again, if I was in the parking assessment district, it would be a checkbox on an application, and we wouldn't be here. I want to kind of to bootstrap my argument. When the Mountain King restaurant and when the bank were there, you had a restaurant that needed 41 spots if you were to count the square footage and use the statute code of what the parking needs would be. And you had a bank next door that required 14 spots with only 9 provided under the deck. So you were deficient 46 spots at the time. That deficiency happened, and that deficiency was in place for, I don't know, 30-odd years, and there was no problem. Nobody said a word. It was 46 deficiency, and life went on, and the city of Birmingham flourished, and everything was okay. So if I had, let's assume the buildings were still there today, just for the sake of argument, and I come to you folks, and I say, folks, I can build a beautiful mixed-use building with all the bells and whistles that the city would be proud of, create a better tax base, attract some retailers that Birmingham would want, and attract some offices that Birmingham would want, and provide residential, and truly do a mixed-use building that covers all the zoning categories of your code. And if I tell you folks that the parking deficiency would be exactly the same way it is had it stayed Mountain King and Talmer Bank, I think everybody would be here says, hey, how fast can you build that? That's a great idea. But so I'm trying to reason this in practicality. I understand that I'm not in the parking assessment district. I understand the numbers seem shocking. You're saying you want 46 cars. But this is what downtowns do. This is how downtowns thrive. And really, that's the crux of my argument. I'm asking for this. There is a mechanism that the Planning Commission approved and the City Commission approved to right this wrong. And we want to take advantage of it just like every other just like every other building in the parking assessment takes it. And that's really what I'm asking for.
Any other comments from your team?
Thank you, Chair. And we understand.
Could you please introduce yourself just for the record, please?
My name is Ethan Holt. I'm counsel.
Thank you.
For the applicant. And we understand the concerns that have been raised by the planning director. But I think ours is really a difference of perspective. And it's the perspective of the analysis under what was undertaken in the planning director's report. And that specifically is Article 3, Section 3.04 D3A of the city zoning ordinance that we've been talking about. That's the perspective that this decision needs to be assessed through. Clearly permits the reduction or elimination of the off-street parking requirements for this site. And when I say this site, that's a critical piece of this. Because as the planning director agrees in his memo and stated to you earlier, this is the only site in all of Birmingham that qualifies for treatment pursuant to this ordinance. The only one. The ordinance was enacted specifically for this property. At that time, this planning board approved it or recommended approval of it by a 4-2 vote. The city commission then approved it by a 5-2 vote. There were reasons for that. And I think you all know them. In fact, Mr. Jeffers asked about them. And that's, this building sits right on the edge of the parking assessment district and should have been part of it. And this ordinance was enacted for the specific purpose of permitting this specific property to be treated as part of the parking assessment district because of where it is located. The proposed recommendation does not treat it that way. The analysis of this property and all the objections to the request for waiver of the parking deficiency look at the building from the perspective of it not being part of the parking assessment district. You're not looking at it and saying, how would we look at this building if it were in the district, which is one step over. So this property is special. This board and the city commission recognize that by enacting 3.04 D3A. And the entire purpose of that was because there was no other mechanism available at the time to have this property treated as if it were in the parking assessment district. So when you analyze the parking requirements and other requirements for this property, you should be looking at it as if it were in that district. Because if you don't, to look at it any other way, then that ordinance, 3.04 D3A, is meaningless. I have to repeat it. The director concedes it is the only property in Birmingham that this ordinance applies to. So if you don't apply the ordinance to this property, what you are saying is that the ordinance has no legal meaning whatsoever. That's contrary to the law. The law of Michigan says you can't enact an ordinance and interpret it and apply it in a way to give it effect and meaning that renders it meaningless. If you do that, that's a violation of law. So to give 3.04 D3A a meaning, the correct starting point for analyzing the plan for this property should be from the perspective of property in the parking assessment district. And if you look at this property from the perspective of one in the parking assessment district, I don't think we'd really be having this conversation. In fact, this property has more parking than many do in the parking assessment district. And you heard Mr. Marcus, the 49 parking space waiver is exactly what was in place before, and not all that significant when you're comparing it to other buildings in that district. In fact, Mr. Dupuy in his opening, when discussing the parking structures available, said that those structures were designed for the parking assessment district and the buildings in it. So you should be looking at this building as if it's one of those buildings in the parking assessment district when our parking study talks about using those structures within a 5-minute walk or a 10-minute walk for access. So evaluating on that basis, the issue this panel and eventually the city commission are going to be asking and should be asking is, if we were looking at this building in the parking assessment district, would we approve it? And we think that answer is yes, and that's what we would ask you to do.
I have a question, a couple for you.
Yes, sir.
If ifs and buts were candy and nuts. Is this site currently located within what was formerly known as the parking assessment district?
No.
Okay. Did your client petition the city to include it in that district at some point in his history?
The answer is yes.
Was he successful?
No, he wasn't, because it was closed and there was no legal
Okay.
mechanism at the time to be able.
Did your
to-
client propose to rezone this property to a different zoning designation?
I'm getting the feeling the answer to all your questions are going to be no.
The answer to that one's yes, because he
Yes.
did apply.
Yeah.
And he was denied by the city commission. When you read Article 3, Section 3.04 D3A, do you see the word shall in there anywhere?
I do not.
Are we as a board and the commission directed to eliminate or reduce parking by anything related to that ordinance?
It is not mandatory.
Okay. Last question. Is the D4 district closed to anybody else in this city attempting to rezone into it? To your knowledge? I mean, you may not know, that's fine.
I do not know.
Mr. Dupuy, is there any reason why a property couldn't petition to enter the D4 zone that is not already currently in what used to be the parking assessment district? To your knowledge?
Not necessarily. Of course, there's all the factors of rezoning.
Of course.
I gotta at least say that. But most recently, RH did that, rezone to D4.
Okay.
It's the most recent example I can think of.
Thank you. Do you have more presentation to give? I interrupted because you spoke very clearly about one section. I want to make sure you have time to do any other presentation you have, and we can get back to any other questions that there might be.
So does the rest of the board have questions for me?
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Fine. I do have my consultants here if you want to ask any questions of them.
Okay, did they have a presentation to give, or just there for questions?
They're here for questions if you want to ask
Thank
about
you.
what GW Studios is, or if you want to ask about the traffic study, they're here for your.
Okay, thank you. I'll open it. Does anyone on the board have a question for either the real estate consultant or the engineering consultant? I know I have one or two, but I wouldn't mind asking Ms. Bauer just a couple of quick questions. If you could please just introduce yourself for the record.
Jill Bauer with Fishback.
Thank you. Just a quick question on the technical memo that you wrote. There were parking statistics that I assume you got from the city about parking in March of 2025, if I'm not
Yes,
mistaken.
that's correct. Yep.
Okay. Did you receive or obtain or search for parking statistics from February or January or any of 2024?
No, these were the ones
2023?
that we were provided were the ones in
Okay.
March.
Was there any analysis for any potential future growth for the city, the district that was formerly known as the Parking Assessment District, or account for Restoration Hardware or the other 2 or 3 projects that are in the walk shed when you were looked at what sort of capacity might be available?
No, what we were focused on is the capacity that's available in this information we were
Okay,
provided.
thank you. That's all I had. Appreciate it. Any other questions for the applicant or his consultants at this time from the board? Okay. With that, I will throw it open for comments from the public. We have 2 microphones here. We also have people that may be online using Zoom, so I'm going to try and balance this herding of cats here. Please, you can come forward, state your name, and provide your brief comment. Again, I would like to make sure everybody does realize that every member of this board, and as part of the packet, has the signed petition with all of the residents of Birmingham Place that have come forward and put their name to it. So we do understand the perspective of many of you here. I ask that we just try and keep our comments as brief and civil as we can so we can make time for everybody without being here until 2:30 in the morning. With that, we'll start. Ma'am, welcome back.
Thank you. Welcome back. Thank you. Good evening. My name is Kate McNevin, and I'm a resident of Birmingham Place, obviously located directly adjacent to the proposed Birmingham Tower project. And I'm here tonight to respectfully request that you deny both the special land use permit, the SLUP, and the site plan amendment for this project. As an immediate neighbor, I am particularly concerned about the 49-space parking deficit that this proposal creates. The Planning Department's memo clearly states that this shortage would need to be absorbed by Birmingham's public system, which is already under duress, and with the closest public parking facility over 700 feet away. This means that the deficit will inevitably spill over onto on-street parking directly around our building and likely into our building, creating increased congestion and reducing parking availability for Birmingham Place residents and our guests and the retail in that building. This project has a troubling 5-year history of seeking variances and modifications after initial approvals. The applicant was denied a 74-space parking variance by the Board of Zoning Appeals in 2022, and yet continues to pursue ways to avoid meeting the basic parking requirements. Multiple postponements and plan revisions demonstrate a pattern that has prolonged this process unnecessarily. The Planning Department's analysis reveals that this 49-space deficit represents far more than just missing parking spots. The applicant is already receiving a 61-space reduction benefit after the B3 zoning district's mixed-use provisions. Combined with this requested 49-space waiver, the total parking shortfall is 110 spaces, a massive burden shift from private property to public infrastructure that frankly our community cannot absorb. References to previous deficits is irrelevant given the changes that were made in Old Woodward when it was redeveloped. I want to emphasize that the Planning Department itself, your professional staff, has thoroughly analyzed this proposal and recommends denial. The updated memo dated July 23rd concludes, and I quote, the parking deficiency is too great to be accommodated by the existing public parking system. The Planning Department also thoroughly reviewed the applicant's technical report and determined it fails to acknowledge the existing 61-space benefit and the disproportionate nature of shifting this burden to public infrastructure. The Planning Department has also identified that the proposed office use on floors 3 and 4 may violate zoning requirements, as office use is limited to a maximum of 2 stories in D4 zones where a 5th story is permitted. The applicant continues to seek modifications that push the boundaries of existing regulations. As Birmingham Place residents, we choose to live in a place where well-planned community with appropriate infrastructure exists. This proposal would create a 110-space total parking deficit that directly impacts our quality of life and sets a really concerning precedent for future developments. I respectfully urge you to support the Planning Department's recommendation and deny both the SLUP, the Special Land Use Permit, and the site plan amendment. Birmingham's zoning ordinances exist to protect our community's character and functionality. This proposal fails to meet those standards and should not be approved. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please, if I could, I understand I understand the sentiment, but let's try and keep this as a public hearing. It's not a rally. I have a gentleman online that has raised his hand next. His name is Larry Rockhind. Mr. Rockhind, if we could make sure he's unmuted.
I should be unmuted now.
There you go, Mr. Rockhind. Welcome.
Thank you. I will be brief. There's an undercurrent in the developer's comments that somehow it's being treated unfairly, and I want to address that. The developer purchased this property in 2017, knowing that it needed to change the zoning and that it would need more parking. How do I know this? I'm not a mind reader, because the developer told us. The property was purchased in 2017. At a zoning board of appeals meeting on November 8th, 2022, the attorney for the developer said, quote, the appellant, Birmingham Tower, believed at the time of purchase of the property that there was a compelling reason and precedent for being allowed into the expired parking assessment district. It was only after purchase that it became clear that the appellant would not be able to follow the precedent for being admitted to the pad, close quote. One more quote, and I'll be done. The developer applied within a year of purchasing the property for zoning changes. He knew he had to change the zoning when he bought the place. Here's a quote from the minutes from Mr. Marcus on June 27, 2018, at a meeting of this board. Quote, Mr. DeRay Marcus said they cannot get a hotel concept on this little parcel, so they have to go vertical by a couple of floors. He has, to be honest, is the economics. He cannot get a development off the ground. They are not in the parking assessment district and are therefore limited by the required parking for an office building or a restaurant, period, close quote. That was at a meeting of this board on June 27, 2018. So this has nothing to do with changed circumstances. It's a nice thing to say, but it ain't true. This developer made a business judgment about what zoning he thought he could change, and he was wrong, and he's asking this board to save him from that wrong business decision, and I respectfully submitted that's not the business you're in. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rockon. There are no other hands online. Is there anyone else here that would care to come forward? Please come forward to either microphone. Introduce yourself.
My name is James Richard. I'm a resident at Birmingham Place Condominiums, and I'm also on the residential board of directors. I'm going to bring, not going to be nearly as professional as the last two people that spoke, but I can bring a little bit more of a human aspect to this. We are all humans, and in being humans, we choose the path of least resistance. And what does that mean to Birmingham Place? That means that the people that cannot find parking at the proposed construction site, proposed building, will find the nearest available parking, and inevitably that is going to be, to some degree or another, Birmingham Place condominiums. We are already tight on our parking. I don't have all the statistics. I just got into town, flew into Metro, and 2 hours late. I'm here, though. Another thing that the proposed tenant is saying that there's going to be this high-end furniture retail experience, which is inherently going to have fewer people than a traditional retail establishment would be. None of us in this room can control who they lease that property to. It's retail, and it's got to meet the retail standards. We can't hope that it's going to be this high-end place. I don't know about you, but I don't shop at Gardner White.
Come on now.
The other thing that really needs to be taken into consideration is whatever information that was given to the developer, which apparently was given by the city, why it was the month of March, I can't imagine. The snowbirds aren't here. It's not weather that is conducive to shopping in the city or doing business in the city. I think something in the months of June, July, August would be much more pertinent than March.
Okay.
Reasonable. And then furthermore, we, the city of Birmingham and its residents are absorbing 200,000 square feet of office and retail space from Restoration Hardware and the building that is directly west of Restoration Hardware on Brown Street. So whatever analysis was done with the available spaces in the parking structures is irrelevant when we look forward.
Thank you.
I think that's all I have to say. Thank you
very much. Any other comments from the public tonight? Good evening.
Good evening. Hi, long time no see, right? So I'm Sam McKnight, and I live at Birmingham Place, and I'm on the board. The Marcus Group developers are certainly a moving target, right? And like any moving target, sometimes it's hard to hit them. And I'm going to say since about 2017, the developers of the building next door to Birmingham Place have pursued an almost endless effort at variances, waivers, exceptions, and new site plans. All of them aimed, in one sense or another, at enhancing their economic interests at the expense of their neighbors. Now, the special treatment they want tonight will not will allow them to waive the parking requirements that all of their neighbors comply with. And the cost of that waiver will be borne by their neighbors, including the residents of Birmingham Place. In all these many years that they have been before this board, there's a finding that appears in virtually every recommendation or decision by this board. And that finding is that 479 South Old Woodward is compatible with the adjacent buildings and neighbors and will enhance the value of those buildings. Now, with all due respect to this board and to the planning director, I've got to tell you, I just don't think that's true. And if you ask any condo owner at Birmingham Place who's tried to sell their condo in the last year or two, whether or not the development next door has enhanced the value of their condo, you'll find out the truth to that, or falseness of that representation. Now, tonight, however, the planning director has at least made one more finding that's different. And that finding is that the requested parking waiver will, in fact, not enhance the value of its neighbors or adjacent buildings, but will be detrimental to our neighborhood. And I think that's absolutely true. He finds that the sought-after parking waiver would be incompatible and hurt the surrounding neighborhood. So I just want to say tonight, as I look at, I guess, one more part of the moving target, we want to be in a new parking assessment district tonight, that the residents of Birmingham Place have already taken one serious financial hit from the building next door. One really serious financial hit. And I'm asking tonight on their behalf that this board not miss this moving target and instead not deliver another financial blow to Birmingham Place, but simply deny this request unequivocally, without qualification, once and for all, so maybe we can get together and talk about something else.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
All right. Any other comments from the public before we, ma'am, please? Please come forward. You can use either microphone.
Okay, my comment.
You can use that one too if you prefer.
Oh,
It's up to you.
I'm used to that one.
Whatever you like. Oh, adults, whatever you like.
What's your name?
If you could please introduce yourself briefly and then.
I'd be happy to. My name is Pat Hardy, and I'm a resident at Birmingham Place, the wonderful Birmingham Place. I am also a business owner, and unfortunately, there are not enough business owners here
Speak to the
tonight.
mic.
I'm one of them.
Ma'am?
Ma'am, speak to the mic.
We need
Okay.
to speak to the
Well,
mic. You're also on
I want the
TV.
people here to know if they own a
You're
business,
addressing the chairman, ma'am.
Sorry.
We have cameras. People at home can't hear you. We want to make sure the record's complete.
Well,
Please.
I will just look in your direction.
Thank you.
As a business owner, Harp's Lingerie, parking structure right behind our store. It's a wonderful spot for business. But we pay a great deal of money for our employees to be able to park in that structure. And I cannot emphasize enough that we're paying for something we can't even use because that structure is not very large, and it's often closed. I think that's an important feature, and, excuse me, Mr. Marcus should know about this, because he will be affected one way or another. So that is my comment. On behalf of all the business owners here, there is not enough parking area in the city. You know it. It's a big problem.
Thank you.
So thank you for listening.
Thank you. All right. Any other comments from the public before we bring it back to the board? I see no hands going up on Zoom. I see no bodies going up here. Going once, going twice. We will bring it back to the board. Board, anyone care to start a discussion? Mr. Jeffers.
All right. So this is like, what, 5 years? Close? Long time.
A little more.
This has gone on too long. I mean, it's still 10 years short of the Hunter House project, but
15.
So I sympathize with anybody living next to construction, especially when it's contentious. But of all the people up here, I probably am the guy who takes the city to task on some of this stuff. This building, this property was D4 when we put every other D4 in the parking assessment district. I've been on this board long enough to know that we run into these things and say, what happened there? And then we correct it. This one didn't get corrected. Our fault, not somebody else's. Our end goal up here is that we have a master plan that we work on for years, and we hope to try to accomplish it. So if we're trying to do that, and I look at this, I say, you know, this is the only building, this is the only property that we have this issue with, that the only building that really works with not being in the parking assessment district and being in D4. I mean, those things go like that. You can't really accomplish the master plan goal of what we're looking for with a, you know, residential and mixed use and self-park it. So their fault? No, ours. The city has grown by, I mean, who remembers 82? How much has the city grown since then? How many parking decks have we built since 1982? 0. I bet the amount of retail and business and all has probably gone up at least 50%. We haven't built one deck. And yet, we take 60 spots away from Woodward to come make it a little more, old Woodward, make it a little more pretty. 60 spots like that. And yet, now we're worried to death about 47 spots, which, or whatever the number is here, which is about the same as Mountain King had, and then we weren't worried about it. So I feel this whole thing, but I think from a doing the right thing for the whole city, doing the thing right for the master plan that we're trying to accomplish, I think this is where we have this leeway with this article. I think this is where we use it. Now, am I happy that we're doing this for the third time? No. Am I happy that, you know, we keep getting changes on this stuff? No. But I mean, if you look at like Restoration Hardware, they came back several times, and every time it got better. And as you get into anything, I'm doing some construction right now. As you start opening up things, as you get into things, as things change on the outside, you can come up with something better and better. And you don't sit there and ignore new information. You try to accommodate it. And so we have the Ethan Allen and the West Elm store are, I can't remember, one of them's their number 1 store in the country, the other one's their number 2 store. That draws attention. That drew attention for RH not to go to Detroit or Grosse Pointe to come to Birmingham. Once you have RH, that draws stuff like CB2 and GW, which, you know, Gardner White trying to maybe fill the shoes of Scott Shuptrine and stuff, but picking Birmingham. So, I mean, if you look at this thing all together, I think it makes sense. Am I happy how we got here? No. Am I sympathetic for the people who got to live next to it and all? No. I mean, yes. Sorry. It sucks. It sucks to live next to this stuff. And this thing's taken forever. So anyway, that's where I'm at on this thing.
Okay. Any other discussion? Mr. Kozik.
Just some comments, and I think we've heard a bunch of these already, but I presume the parking assessment district limits were established by studies and something beyond just somebody taking a Sharpie and drawing some boundary. The 2016 plan was authored by some very sophisticated planners who I think probably took all that into consideration it was pointed out there are a number of significant projects that we hope come in line that are entitled, the Hunter House site, I'm not sure the other one in the Triangle District ever applied, but there's a number of them that haven't even tapped into our public parking yet. When you purchase, and this goes both ways, I mentioned this before with the Birmingham Place people, if you had done your homework and nobody does their homework, you'd probably know that your neighbor could build a 5-story building there. So they were entitled to do that. In the same sense, a developer who's sophisticated, when you buy a piece of property, you do your homework and you determine what you can do and what you can't do. There may be unique circumstances that where there's a process that you go through to try to get something that might be more in alignment with what works for them, for the city. But in any case, I'm trying to read my notes here and I forgot my glasses, so I can write, I just can't see it. In the commercial use, whether it's Gardner White, I think that it's, as somebody mentioned, if this were to get approved, it's commercial, first floor, second floor, right? So we know Art Van was in business, they went away. They were bought up by somebody else. They were bought up by, I think, eventually Gardner White. It could be any commercial use, right? If this were approved, it's not tied to Gardner White being that tenant, right?
Well, what I would say is that's a little bit more complicated of a question than you're leading on. Because this is a special land use permit, the city commission does have an ability to potentially assign things like that and to require an applicant to come back should things change, should the conditions of the site change. So that hasn't happened yet, so I don't want to make it seem like it has.
So I think that would be burdensome because, again, it's a blip in time, and when we plan and build things, it's for the next 50 years. So I do have a lot of concerns. When I look at the number, it's a substantial number of cars. In total, it's 110. If 61 were already sort of, granted through some process, 49 is another big chunk. So, and even I know you're entitled to build what's approved, but the stacked parking for residential, I can't imagine how that really functions without backing up the drive. So I think you're pumping a lot already into this building, and anything that goes above and beyond what's approved, I'm concerned.
All right, I'd like to jump in real quickly. Mr. Jeffries, with due respect, I don't think it's fair to say that was the city's fault. We don't know whose fault it was. For all we know, the property owner said, I'm too cheap, I don't want to pay to be in your assessment, like they did at Adams Square when the Triangle District plan came around. So I think that's a misrepresentation that is just open to endless discussion, but I also think it's missing the point. I'd like to recenter this, and I'd like to thank Mr. Kozak for helping do that. We are here tonight because they've asked for a change in the site plan to amend the uses within the building. End of story. That change is going to result in an additional 49 parking spaces being deficient. The site, let's talk about this. The technical memo provided by the applicant suggests that the Peabody and Pierce decks had excess parking in March of 2025. It makes no attempt to study seasonal impacts, general use throughout the year, nor does it look to extrapolate future growth, and more egregiously, it completely ignores the several developments that we've mentioned here tonight. In short, the report, while technically sound, simply states that in March of 2025, the parking decks at Pierce and Peabody didn't have as many cars parking in them. Great. I think it's important now to note this site is not in what was the former parking assessment district. I don't care why. They had their shot at why when they tried to get it in and were rejected by the city.
It was closed.
That argument doesn't hold water to me. they can't be in the parking assessment district. The argument made by council that we must look at it through the eyes of Article 3, Section what have you, I think I've shown to not be the case. And furthermore, I question why, even if there is an abundance of parking, why this particular site should be the benefactor of that parking when there are numerous other properties located within that boundary that still haven't developed, that have paid in over time, and still haven't used that deck to their full abilities. Furthermore, why they should be the benefactor of 25% of the excess capacity that their engineer says is in those decks. It's an astronomical number. Almost related, somewhat related to this is the fact that this project already has received relief from parking. We live in a walkable community, and as such, we reduced parking as allowed by ordinance for the mixed-use nature of the building already. So there's no way you can convince me that this is not at least a double dip, if not a triple dip, into the parking standards for this particular site. So based on the facts outlined in the report and the points that I just raised, there is no way that I can conclude that this proposed change would be anything other than detrimental to the surrounding community, the surrounding business owners, and put an unneeded strain on the city's infrastructure at a time when we've got other development coming online. So I'm sorry, there is absolutely zero way I am supporting this change, because in top of it, the building is already entitled and he can go build what he's already allowed to do.
I'll add one
Mr. Cozy.
quick statement. So the intent of the 2016 plan was to encourage building residential so people would live in the downtown. So that was the perk. We'll let you go 5 floors if you do 2 floors of this. You know, if you had enough parking, I think the commercial on the second floor complies, correct, in terms of how the sandwich is built. I can't think of any. I guess we have some second floor commercial, maybe in the Merrillwood building or something, but it's pretty unusual. And if it's not stacked, if the tenant on the first floor is on the second floor, it doesn't often work. So commercial on the first floor, we require clear glass. There's lots of sort of this dialogue between what happens in the pedestrian. You know, once it's on the second floor, you can't see what's going on up there. So the whole intent was, let's bring residential into the downtown. And I think you spoke to the fact that the model doesn't work, or it's flawed, or maybe it worked at one time and doesn't work now. Again, we don't control that.
Any other comments? Mr. Boyle?
Yeah, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to take this public occasion to ask some blunt questions of the staff and of others at this board. I also agree that it is difficult to see how we do anything else but deny. But then what? This is not hypothetical. They're still getting put in the air as we speak. I drove by it. I looked today. It's getting built. We deny this? What happens? Mr. Dupuy, we'll start with you.
As I sort of mentioned earlier, they're going to build a 5-story mixed-use building with 1 story commercial, 2 office on 2 and 3.
Can they park
residential.
as awarded in the permit?
The current parking conditions on site as approved, they still have the 88 underground. They're enjoying the 11 space parking variance.
Yeah.
As well as, I don't have the exact number, but the same B3 reductions that we are talking about today.
So I'll repeat my question. If they build it as approved, they can park this building?
Yes.
They can?
Yes.
Okay. So the implications of our decision tonight will allow this developer to build his building as we approved it 2 years ago, was it? 2 years ago.
2. Correct.
Do I need to repeat my question? You're aware? Everybody's aware. Thank you.
Any other comments? Mr. Williams?
I'd like to make a motion.
Seeing no other hands, what do you have?
Okay, well, let me say and repeat that whatever the planning board does tonight, we are not the final arbiter of this request. It will go to the city commission, no matter what the outcome, okay? So everybody in the public needs to understand the importance of the August meeting before the city commission. Secondly, I think it's important, and so I have scribbled some notes, extensive. I'm a lawyer by training, so I don't do anything by memory anymore, and I've written them down. But I think it's important that we have findings to go to the city commission on this request. Okay, so here goes.
Can I just say one thing?
No, ma'am.
Don't show him a chance.
What?
Go ahead. Go ahead. Mr. Williams, you have the floor.
I'm confused. He wanted me to stop. Okay. I move that the planning board recommend that the city commission deny the special land use permit application for 479 South Old Woodward, Birmingham Tower for the following reasons. One, the planning board adopts the findings of the planning department report dated July 23, 2025, which takes into account the provisions of Article 3, Section 304, D3A of the ordinance, and except to the extent it is inconsistent with any of the additional findings set forth as follows. Number two, the applicant has not established that there is an excess of residential units in the downtown area generally, or in the southern portion of the downtown area specifically, or that a second floor of residential units on the site would be inordinately difficult to market. Three, the applicant has not established that there is a shortage of retail space in the downtown area generally, or in the southern portion of the downtown area specifically, such that 2 floors of commercial use are necessary for a building in this location to be successful. 4, the current master plan encourages additional residential usages in the downtown area. 5, the proposed site plan fails to comply with Section 4.50 of the zoning ordinance by a shortage of at least 49 on-site parking spaces, 47 if the city commission allows the applicant to count 2 on-street parking spaces. 6, merchants in the immediate area have complained that there is a shortage of public parking spaces in the southern portion of South Old Woodward. 7, the parking study submitted by the applicant does not take into account the RH building and Bogie/Chase developments to the west of RH and other commercial properties within the former parking assessment district which may be developed. The number of available parking spaces at the day measured in the report is not indicative of the long-term usage of those decks. 8, the substantial parking shortage would be a burden on and injurious to A, the nearby commercial and residential properties that have on-site parking spaces, B, the publicly available on-street parking near 479 South Old Woodward, which has recently been reduced in number. C, the residential neighborhood to the west of 479 South Old Woodward would perhaps be adversely affected. And D, the capabilities of the city's public parking system, which will adversely affect the businesses in the former parking assessment district and their patrons. 9, therefore, the incompatibility of this request is contrary to the spirit and purposes of the zoning ordinance and fails to meet the requirements of Article 7, Section 7.36 of the zoning ordinance. That is my motion.
Motion by Mr. Williams. Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Mr. Boyle, was that you seconding?
Oh, second, sorry.
Seconded by Mr. Boyle. Conversation of the motion at the board. Seeing none, we do have an opportunity for the public to comment on the motion. Again, this is a comment on the motion. It's part of Robert's rules. I have to do it. But if there are any comments on the motion itself, going once, going twice, we'll bring it back to the board. Let's roll call this, please.
Brian Williams,
Yes.
Robin Boyle,
Yes.
Scott Klein,
Yes.
Stuart Jeffries,
No.
Bert Kozak,
Yes.
Janelle Wilkes-Boyce,
Yes.
Duncan Curry.
Yes.
All right, I count that 6-1.
We got another motion?
Now we have a second motion for final site plan and design review. Mr. Williams?
There's not much distinction, but I guess I'll read the whole thing again. When you're hot, you're hot. I move that the planning board recommend to the city commission to deny the final site plan and design review application for 479 South Old Woodward, Birmingham Towers for the following reasons. And this is respect to the final site plan and design review. 1, the planning board adopts the findings of the planning department report dated July 23, 2025, taking into account the provisions of Article 3, Section 3.04 D3A. And except to the extent that the report is inconsistent with any of the additional findings set forth as follows. 2, the applicant has not established that there is an excess of residential units in the downtown area generally, or in the southern portion of the downtown area specifically, or that a second floor of residential units on this site would be inordinately difficult to market. 3, the applicant has not established that there is a shortage of retail space in the downtown area generally, or in the southern portion of the downtown area specifically, such that 2 floors of commercial use are necessary for a building in this location to be successful. 4, the current master plan encourages additional residential uses in the downtown area. 5, the proposed site plan fails to comply with Section 4.50 of the zoning ordinance by a shortage of at least 49 on-site parking spaces, 47 if the city commission allows the applicant to count 2 on-street parking spaces. 6, merchants in the immediate area have complained that there is a shortage of public parking spaces in the southern portion of South Old Woodward. 7, the parking study submitted by the applicant does not take into account the RH Building and Bogie/Chase developments to the west of RH Building and other future commercial properties within the former parking assessment district. The number of available parking spaces at the day measured in the report is not indicative of the long-term usage of those decks. 8, the substantial parking shortage would be a burden on and injurious to 1A, the nearby commercial and residential properties that have on-site parking spaces, B, the publicly available on-street parking near 479 South Old Woodward, which has been recently reduced in number, C, the residential neighborhood to the west of 479 South Old Woodward, and D, the capabilities of the city's public parking system, which will adversely affect the businesses in the former parking assessment district and their patrons. This incompatibility is contrary to the spirit and purposes of the zoning ordinance. Therefore, the application fails to meet the requirements of Section 7.36 of the zoning ordinance.
Motion, Mr. Williams. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Mr. Boyle, conversation at the board. Mr. Jeffers.
One point, we brought up that the master plan, is looking for increased residential, which is true. It also is looking for additional parking, another deck, so.
Okay. To the public, one last comment on the motion. Any last public comment on the motion? I see no hands going up. We'll bring it back to the board. Let's roll call this one too, please.
Brian Williams,
Yes.
Robin Boyle,
Yes.
Scott Klein,
Yes.
Stuart Jeffries,
No.
Bert Kozak,
Yes.
Janelle Wilkes-Boyce,
Yes.
Duncan Curry.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-1. Thank you, everybody, for your participation. Again, this will go to the City Commission for a public hearing that will be announced and published in the future. I don't know when that will be. There will be noticing for that, and again, it will be the City Commission's final determination as to what happens next. Thank you for your process, and if you can, if you're would like to stay and see how the rest of this exciting world of planning goes, please do. But if you're gonna leave, we do have other business. The meeting is still going on, so.
I know.
Yes.
I had a.
Yeah.
Maybe you can announce it.
It's August 11th. We
But I think
Mr. Dupuy, can you quickly just,
I spoke.
Yeah, sure. Just for those in the room, the city commission meeting, the postcard you received August 11th.
I apologize, I did not realize the date had been established.
Yep, it'll be very
My
similar
apologies.
to what happened here tonight, same structure and everything.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, let's move forward. We had,
Ask them to leave quietly.
if we could again get you to
What was that you said, man?
file that quietly, please.
What was that you said?
Please. Thank you. All right, let's move forward. Pre-application, I didn't see anything, Mr. Dupuy. Communication, project updates, I don't know if anybody had any questions related to those updates.
Well, I spent a lot of time on it.
No? All right.
City Commission.
Our next, let's see, administrative approval correspondence. Any questions on that? Roof plan, seems pretty straightforward, right? Any questions from the board?
No.
Fantastic. All right, let's move forward. We have a draft agenda for next meeting, which is August 13th, believe it or not. We're going to get back into study session. So zoning ordinance update. I assume you might have an RFP for us, a draft?
I hope so.
You hope so. You're working on it, I know. So,
Yeah.
Triangle District bonus height should be good, and childcare sounds good.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
Does anybody have any strong feelings if we were to suggest sort of abandoning the child care ordinance update for now in favor of just wrapping it into the overall ordinance update?
Yeah,
Since
good
we'll be
idea.
taken with quite enough other things.
I have no problem with that.
Seems like there's no
It's not, the less we piecemeal, the happier we are.
Yeah.
We will
okay.
gladly defer to the city manager and the city attorney on that one.
That's great. Good idea.
Good, excellent idea.
Just got a promotion, Mr.
Well,
Dupuy.
Come here more often.
Senior
Golly,
planning director.
Wow.
Senior planning director.
All right. With that, is there any other business before the board?
Can I just throw out something? I don't know where exactly this would fall, and it's probably not in our purview. But, you know, they did the recent going around and whacking the trees underneath the power lines thing. And then
Still
I've also
doing it.
known the arborist has also gotten rather aggressive on getting trees that he thinks are going to die.
Right.
And still have full leaves. I did something years ago, and I'm not saying I'm a genius. There are two trees that happen to grow up in between two of the trees the city planted. And as they've gotten bigger, now if they take down this other tree, it's not a big hit to the street. Is there a way that, or do I just talk to the arborist about, you know, can we plant interim trees in areas where you think that tree is compromised and might have 3 to 5 years left or something? Because I've noticed somebody just lost 3 trees on their side at North Lawn and Pierce, and they put in trees, and if they're that big around my lifetime, that tree won't be over my head. It's just, I don't know. I really feel like on some of these streets, Maryland is like a big example. Used to be people, they'd say, I want to live on Maryland. One guy bought 3 houses over his lifetime on Maryland because of all the trees, and now it's like barren. I mean, the first block is really bad.
Yeah.
So I'm just looking for something to be more proactive if we value the trees and this.
Well, the city puts in, use my words, dinky replacement trees.
Yeah.
When you-
Wannabe saplings.
Well, and the experience where I formerly lived on Stanley with the boulevard is half the dinky trees die.
Yeah.
And then they got to start over with another useless dinky tree.
I don't know. It seems like we could do better than what we're doing.
Yeah, it's a good
Well,
point,
yeah.
Stuart.
I got to defend us a little bit
No, you don't.
because, there's thousands and thousands of trees in the city, right? And we developed as a city starting in the 1920s. some of these older trees, the elms, the silver maples, lots of those around town. So a lot of the ones that people see that are big that are going down are those types of trees. And the DPS director was up here for about an hour and a half last commission Monday night explaining a lot of this stuff. I actually really encourage you to watch it. Because there is a big movement right now because people are seeing a lot of trees coming down and they're wondering why. There are trees, yes, but how does it affect the character of a street and your property? So very important stuff. They'll, you said things like they plant like 240 trees this year. They are trying to put in larger caliber trees to try to minimize the impact. And when you put in bigger trees, those trees that are maybe a 6-inch caliber, they're way more money. So there's a trade-off to be had here. So when you buy big trees versus small trees, all those things.
But my main point was, can we be more proactive, not wait for the tree to die or whatever? Because they went around and they identified these trees in our neighborhood. Saying this thing's got 3 to 5 years or whatever.
Yeah.
Sure.
Plant the tree now in between 2 trees. And then when that one comes down, it's not that impact. And then you put a little sapling, whatever there.
Yeah, and that's all fine. And you should talk to Scott over at DPS about that. And it goes without saying, I don't think it's all inappropriate, but with the special treatments license, you can plant your own trees too, so you don't have to wait around for us necessarily.
Yeah.
But if it's really important to you.
Does the arborist, is he a city employee or is it a contract guy?
It's a little bit of both. We do have 2 certified arborists on staff right now, which is sort of new. We've got a newer arborist.
And you got Hart?
Sits on all these boards and things. But we still do use J.H. Hart a lot as a contractor. Yeah.
All right, thanks for hearing me out.
Mr. Jeffrey speaks for the trees. That's right, too.
But it's hard to hug when it's so teeny.
Hard to hug a big tree.
Crushed it.
So I'll watch that because, I have that concern and, we've talked, it means nothing what we talk about here. So who's in charge and who's responsible, is there a committee or whatever? Walk past AAA and it looks like it did a year or 2 or 3 or 4. It's weeds growing out of tree grades.
Horrible.
And now, unfortunately, and you pointed that out to me, Duncan, the trees in front of Forest Grill
They're all dead.
are dying. And those are beautiful trees, and they grew, actually. So cutting them down and replacing it with concrete, I hope to God is not the answer. I've talked to Mike Duell about this, and I think what was done on South Woodward, where you've got larger areas as opposed to a 4-foot by 4-foot. So,
And I think they use silva cells. I mean, they actually planted the things properly.
There they did.
Watering, yes. And
But
watering.
With watering.
a private developer, what are they mandated to do? We should have a standard, and somebody's got to inspect it, so.
Yeah.
But we talk about it, doesn't mean anything. I walk past AAA all the time.
I think I'll give you guys
It
a
looks
solid no.
it looks like it could be in some third world country or something. It's a real shame.
I'll send you all the links so you don't have to go looking.
Okay.
Just for your convenience, because
All right.
I get the gist.
All right. And with that, we will say meeting adjourned.